Welcome to our friends and family breakfast. I'm so glad that so many of you came to come eat breakfast. Thank you for bringing food. Thank you for those who made it. That was very kind of you to do that. Let me begin our time together with a little time of prayer, and then I'll jump into what we're going to talk about this morning. So let's pray together. Father, we are very grateful for our church family and for our friends. We're very grateful for the work you've done here, the way that you are obviously carrying us along through so many new things, through changes. But Father, we ask today that you would help us to keep our eye on you, that we would, through our decisions over the next few months, seek to make you more famous in our own hearts and in the hearts of others. And that you would be with us today as we talk through these things. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, welcome again. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. This morning, we want to talk to you a little bit about some things that are going to happen over the next 6 months at our church. As you probably have noticed, we have a lot of people coming to Christ the King. You probably see new people here almost every week. I had someone mention to me, and we've had some staff discussions about people that have mentioned that, like, this is just very different than what a lot of you who originally started out with us experienced. That this is a brand new thing. It seems like God is adding to our number. We keep having to change rooms and stages and all these things over the last 2 years, and that is just the blessing of the Lord. And we're really grateful for that. And we, from the very beginning, have said in regards to our church that the most important thing is that we're healthy. That's where we want to put our emphasis, and we believe that we do that by abiding in Jesus, by encouraging one another to abide in Jesus, and by drawing new people in to abide in Jesus. So that's where we want to keep our eye and our focus. And this morning I want to talk to you a little bit about what's going to happen in the future. But wanted you to know that as some of these changes happen in our church, that there are some things that are not changing at all. And that is our commitment to abiding in Jesus as the main thing that we do as a church, as our mission, and also our vision to see this area rest, rejoice, and reconcile in Jesus. So those things are not changing, but we will change over time. And I want to talk to you about a few ways that we are going to see that. 4 ways in particular over the next few months. Now, the pattern of what I want to do this morning is I want to walk you through some these 4 areas. And I'm going to do it by looking at some questions about each one and explaining some things to you. And then hopefully we can do that in about 20, 30 minutes or so. And then at the end, I'm going to leave time for about 15 minutes of questions if you have them. And we'll be glad to answer those. If we can't get to your questions, then a lot of these things we would like for you to think about discussing in your community groups, in your discipleship groups, or just offline, grabbing me or somebody else on staff and asking them the questions. They'll be glad to do that as well. So let's start out. Christ the King, the season 1 finale. Okay, why did we choose to say that? Well, this is a season of our church that's coming to an end. And that is that probably in about 6 months, we are no longer going to be a church plant, or what they call a mission church. We are going to become what's called a particular church. And so I want to talk to you first of all. The first topic that I want to discuss with you is becoming a particular church and what that means. So what is a mission church or a church plant? A mission church is distinguished from a particular church in that it has no permanent governing body and thus must be governed by and supervised by others. However, its goal is to mature and be organized as a particular church as soon as this can be done decently and in good order. That is actually from one of the documents our church holds as a standard called the Book of Church Order, and it's describing what a mission church like us is and what we're going to become. So how are we currently being led if we don't have leadership that we've elected from our own church? Christ the King is governed by a provisional leadership team. Now, I've told you guys about this a number of times before. It's provided by our presbytery, which are the local group of churches in this area. They are the ones who wanted to start a church in Braselton and who hired me to do it. The current provisional leadership team is composed of 6 elders from our local geographic area. 3 of these elders currently attend our church here at Christ the King, and 3 of them, including me, and 3 of them do not. I want to tell you who they are real quick. The 3 that are here are me, Mark Landers, if you'll raise your hand, Mark, okay, and Shane Ammons, wherever Shane is. Shane's right here, okay? And then there are 3 other elders that are part of that leadership team, and they are D. Hammond, who is assistant pastor at Chestnut Mountain, Ben Coppage, who is the RUF pastor at the University of Georgia, and Morgan Angert, who is the pastor at Good Shepherd in Athens, okay? So they're all 3 pastors. And so this provisional leadership team is who has been leading our church. How does Christ the King become a particular church as opposed to a church plant? Well, the key is we must appoint and install our own elders in order to become a particular church. How do we appoint our own elders? We do this. The provisional leadership team that we just mentioned to you has nominated a group of qualified candidates from our congregation. These candidates are currently being trained and vetted to serve as elders. And after their training and examination, the candidates will be presented to you to be elected. Now, I want to say this to you because it's strange that I'm not going to tell you who they are. But I want to tell you why I'm not telling you who they are. It's because they're going through a process right now of training and discerning whether or not they're called to do this. The provisional leadership team has said, hey, we're recognizing these guys doing this work in our church, and we want to vet them and train them over a period of time, and if they want to do it, if they feel called to do it, then we're going to present them to the congregation. And so if I were to tell you who they are right now, that might put undue pressure on them to be an elder here when they may not want to be, okay? And so we want to make sure that their conscience is not bound by that. And so our hope is, and you can go to the next slide, how have the elder candidates been selected by the provisional leadership? The men currently selected have all already served as elders in the PCA. So they've already all done this in a church before. And have already been eldering, I'm going to call that shepherding and stewarding the vision here at Christ the King in both formal and informal ways. These men are all biblically qualified, love Jesus deeply, and are aligned with the mission, vision, and value of Christ the King. They have all expressed a willingness to be considered and have committed to pray towards serving as the first elder team at Christ the King. So that's what they are, what they're doing right now. And so as we continue along this process over the next few months, as they become more and more comfortable with this being their calling, once we have finished the training, we will present them to you. When will the elder candidates be presented to the congregation? The hope is for these candidates to be introduced to the congregation by the end of this year and to schedule an election sometime in the first quarter of 2023. Will this be the way that elders will continue to be elected in the future? Now, this is important for you to understand because when we first start, it's a little different than when we continue. And the answer to that is no. Once our church particularizes or becomes a particular church, the congregation will then nominate future elder candidates. One of the reasons for this is that you will actually get to watch these guys over the next few years and see what eldering looks like in the church. And then as you look around and see other people that are doing that, you will nominate them to serve in that capacity. They will then be trained, vetted, and examined by our elders here. And then they will go before the congregation for election. So it'll look a little different in the future than it does now because we have provisional leaders at this time. How will the congregation participate in the election of this first group of elders? All right, 3 ways I'm going to give you. The first is this, is for you to pray. We would ask the church to pray throughout this process for God to confirm the right men to serve as elders at Christ the King. I cannot overemphasize the need for this. We have been a church so far that has been really carried along by the Spirit of God. We've seen God do mighty and good things in our work, and that has been because it has been undergirded with prayer from the very beginning. And so really the primary thing that we need right now is for all of our church to pray that God will give us good elders here at the church. Secondly, participate. After the elder candidates are finalized and nominated by the provisional leadership team, we will introduce them to you. This will be done through a series of interviews in our worship services and other gatherings so that the church can get to know them better. After a time of introduction, Christ the King will then hold an election for these elders. And so the congregation's participation in this is to get to know them once they're announced, and then for you to be able to say, I have confidence in this person, and I want them to serve as an elder in our church. And then the last one is to party. After the election, our church and our friends from the presbytery will have a special worship service. It's called a particularization service. though we probably won't call it that because that's weird. And we will, at this time, install the elected elders and officially become a particular church. I don't know why, but whenever I hear that, I always think about Pinocchio saying, I want to be a real boy, and that's kind of what's happening here. I want to be a real church. It's happening to us when we have our own leaders. And we will then, after that, have a party and celebrate this new season of our church life together. Hence the reason we said this is the season 1 finale, right? We've worked, we've as a church, worked very hard to get to this point where we can be self-sustaining and have our own leadership. And so this will be a time for us to really party and have a good time and to remember, celebrate what God has done among us. So that's a little bit about elders and what this would look like for us to have a church that is particularized and that has elders. Second change or new thing that I want to talk to you about over the next 6 months is an assistant pastor search. I've mentioned this to you a number of times before, and I want to catch you up on kind of where we are in that process and why we would want to do that. So first of all, what is an assistant pastor? The PCA has a really weird way of talking about pastors that are not the senior or lead pastor in a church, and one of those is what we call an assistant pastor. An assistant pastor is an ordained elder called by the Christ the King leadership team to serve in a particular role as a pastor of the church. He is an employee of the church, but called by the church leaders of the elders instead of the congregation. So, for example, if we go back to what we talked about earlier about elders becoming us electing our own elders, you elect them, all right? And you elect your pastors too sometimes. You elect your lead pastor always, the congregation does. But in this rare example, assistant pastors work for the leaders in the church. So they're more of a staff person than they are a fully vetted elder like everybody else. But our hope is that as people serve in these roles for a period of time, that they would become a pastor that the congregation would know and want to elect as an elder to serve on on the leadership team. If you go to the next one. Why is Christ the King searching for an assistant pastor? All right. So in the fall of 2021, last fall, our provisional leaders determined that we should begin this process for 2 reasons. One, the church was growing at a rate where we believed that the lead pastor and the staff needed additional full-time help eventually. And we were thinking 6, 8 months, maybe a year in advance, that this is something that we've got to start thinking about. Secondly, the provisional leaders wanted a minister who would help Christ the King grow specifically in the areas of mercy and missions. I don't have a lot of experience in mercy and missions, and this is an area that we really want to grow in. We want to be a more outward-facing church. We want to think about church planting in other places. We want to think about local ministry where we live, and also foreign missions in the future. And we need somebody that has expertise in that to help us as a church. So that's where we're going to put a lot of emphasis with this new pastor, would be in those areas. So what kind of assistant pastor are we seeking? This position is for a pastor of teams and outreach. All right. So I want to pause for a minute. The reason we came to this conclusion that it would be a pastor of teams and outreach is because these are the areas where we really needed help and where I was weak as a minister here. This new minister would pastorally oversee all of Christ the King's ministry teams. You guys serve on a lot of those teams in what we do. And he'll be the pastor over them all. And then he will also lead in the areas of outreach, specifically mercy and missions. These roles are our greatest needs heading into our next season, and they complement the gifts of the lead pastor. So if we're going to have 2 full-time people on our staff, we want them to complement one another. We don't want gifts to overlap. We want them to be different. And we also really want this person to be comfortable in a number 2 role, not a lead role. How will this assistant pastor be selected and hired? Okay. Well, because we're a provisional church and we have provisional leadership, that team is conducting the search and is going to hire the minister. Some important qualifications for this position are experience in teams leadership, experience in the areas of mercy and mission, and compatibility with the lead pastor. The provisional leadership is currently looking at some local candidates, but if the search is widened, we're going to announce an opportunity to accept resumes going forward. So that's where we are in the process right now. We're early. We're looking at a few people around us in the kind of Atlanta area that might be interested in this, and then we'll broaden it if we don't find the person that we're looking for. What's the timeline to hire this pastor? We would like to hire him as soon as we can. So there you go. How will the congregation participate in the call of the assistant pastor? We ask that the congregation pray for the provisional leadership team and the lead pastor as they continue to search for him. Pray that God would provide a quick path to the new pastor and that he would be a delight to us as a congregation. So that's really prayer is where we're looking for the most. And we'll let you know more ways that you can support this once we find a candidate. All right, third area of change that we're going to be looking at over the next few months is communications. How will Christ the King Church communications change in the fall? This is very important. This is going to affect everybody in this room at least, okay? This fall, our church will begin to communicate within the Church Center app. This will become the primary way we will communicate about community groups, ministry teams, and volunteering. Basically, anything that's open to everyone within the church, we're going to use this app to communicate with. Why are we making this change? As our church grows, the Church Center app will allow us more security, and it will provide us easier systems to communicate and volunteer. It also allows our ministry teams to more easily schedule families to serve and to avoid conflicts. You probably have already recognized this if you serve around here, but some people do music, some people do kids, some people help set up, some people help tear down, some people are doing things up front. There's so many jobs that are happening on Sunday, and that's not even including some of the other things that we do outside of this, like community groups leadership and discipleship groups leadership. And we're beginning to see that everybody was communicating in different ways. Some people would text, some people would email, some people would try to meet in person, some people would use offline things. And so what we wanted is to have one system to be able to communicate with everyone, and that will keep us from overlapping and communicating like multiple people in your family to do things that would cause conflicts or you to have conflicts. This whole system will help us to be able to monitor volunteering a lot easier. The system also provides a church directory for us. We're getting big enough that people don't know each other, and so we want a way for people to be able to get to know each other. And when you download this app and you enter your email in it, it's probably going to already recognize you. And when it does, you can put any information about yourself that you want other people to know about, and that's what will be in the directory. So if you don't want people to know your phone number, you don't have to put it in there. If you want to put a picture on there, you can, so that people can get to know you, but you don't have to. And it allows much easier access to our podcast, live stream, resource pages, and the giving portal. We'll talk about that in a minute. Our hope is to use the app for all internal communication and volunteer scheduling by the end of this year. So we're moving toward it. We realize that it's going to take a while for people to accept this and to adapt to it. Some people don't like apps, and we understand that. We'll still have ways to communicate with you, but this is the primary way that we want to try to communicate within the church so that we're more aligned in what we do. How do I get it? All right. Well, you can download it by scanning the QR codes. I'm about to show them to you. Get your phone out if you're not already on this thing. Once you enter your email address at the top of the app, it will recognize you if you're already in the database, which most of you will be. And if not, it will ask you some questions to get you signed up. So if you will, if you don't have the app and you have your phone, I want you just to scan this, if you will. Take 1 second, scan it for us if you have an Apple phone or an Android phone, and it will pop it up. And you can download it, okay? We have lots of Wi-Fi in this place. So we want you to go ahead. So feel free to do that. Take just a second and do it. It will be better to do it now than to delay, okay? If you can. If you have questions about how this works, about using the app, Grace will be glad to help you with that. She is our Director of Operations. Or you can ask anybody else, and they're probably going to tell you to talk to Grace too. So, okay, we'll go to the next thing. Everybody? You can also get this app on our website, and we'll have that available for you as well. Okay? Will there be any other communications changes that will be happening? I want to share one with you, but I forgot to grab this. Oh, okay. We're also this week going to begin a new process in our worship service, and that is we're going to pass these blue books during our service. I'm going to ask at a particular time during the service that are on the inside aisles, for those of you that are on the inside aisle, to take the book, and on the inside of it, it has a short welcome and instructions, and it just has a place for your name, your address, and your email each week. And what we'd like for you to do is to take this and pass it down the row. Sign in. If you're already getting emails from us, you don't have to fill out anything. But it's also something for our newcomers to be able to, and our guests to be able to fill out as they go. A common rule that we found in the church is this. We don't like asking guests to do something that everyone else is not doing. Okay? We don't like asking guests to do something that no one else is doing. So when we ask them to fill out a card or to scan a QR code, increasingly they don't do that because everybody else is not doing that. Or they'll just say, I'll do it later, and they forget. And so we're getting to the point now where we can't track people that are coming to visit us. And we'd like to know who they are. So this is going to give you an opportunity. So this is my encouragement to you. As you take this, please sign it every week. Okay? Don't say, I've been here every week, I don't have to sign it. Sign it because what it's doing is it's enabling the person next to you who's visiting to sign it. Okay? It's also an awesome way for you to see who's sitting next to you if you don't know them and to be able to say something to them later in the service. It's a way for you to get to know them. So we're going to start doing this morning. Okay? If you'll just pass them down the aisles, and once they're passed down, just leave them on the edges, and we'll take care of it from there. It's very simple for you to do. Last thing, and this is crucial. Okay? I cannot tell you how crucial this is. Financial giving. All right? Is the way we give financially to Christ the King changing? The answer is yes. Okay? Reform University Fellowship, RUF, has been so kind to let us be part of their UCI initiative, which is to help young church planners, particularly that have been in RUF, to be able to start churches. Basically, RUF has run our payroll. They've taken all of our donations in over the course of the last 2 years. And also provided us with pretty incredible administrative HR help in everything that we're doing. It has been such a gift for us to be able to use them. But they are ending that. After a period of time, that ends, and that ends for us this month. And so within the next month, RUF will cease to process our online donations, and we will be transitioning to a new giving portal. All right? When do I need to transition my giving from RUF to the new portal? Obviously, immediately. I need you to do it immediately. RUF will receive our donations for the rest of this month, but then will no longer accept them. If you give online, you will need to end your giving with RUF and to begin your giving in the new portal immediately. If you have given to Christ the King in the past, you or your spouse should have received an email this week already with detailed instructions about how to do this. If you have not received that email, you're going to get another one this week on Wednesday. Grace will be glad to send you one if you would like the instructions on how to do this. And we are going to probably pester you more than you like to do this over the next month. It is really critical that when we make this change, that everyone knows how to do it and are able to do it. If you give by check, will anything change? We've already been asked this question a couple of times, and the answer is you can still give by check in the offering basket each week. Checks are made out to Christ the King. But if you mail checks in, the address is going to change. You will no longer mail them to RUF. Now you'll mail them to this address, 5923 Riverwood Drive, Braselton, Georgia. That's also, I think, printed. It's printed on our website. If you scroll to the bottom of the website, it gives our address on the bottom, and you can mail them in that way as well. How does a transition like this normally affect churches? If congregants switch their giving over without delay, it will have little effect. But if congregants wait too long, or they forget, or they do not sign up by the new method, tens of thousands of dollars in regular giving are lost in the transition. I spoke to a friend of mine in Lawrenceville who planted a church a number of years ago, and when they transferred theirs over, I think they lost $30,000 in 1 month. Simply because people delayed in making the transitions. So I'm coming to you. So if you can make that transition as soon as possible, please, please, please do that. And don't be mad at us for keep asking, because we're going to keep asking you to do it along the way. Okay?